I work as a ranger at Acadia National Park. That's the official part. The part that shows up on tax forms and explains why I wear the uniform 5 days a week, sometimes 6 if the schedule gets tight. The hat, the badge, the whole thing. Most people think it's about the wildlife or the tourists or some kind of calling. It's not really that for me. The uniform gets me into the woods during hours when everyone else stays home. Early mornings before the trail crews clock in. Late evenings after the last day hikers pack up their Subarus and drive back to Bar Harbor. That's when I do the actual work. The ranger paycheck helps. Covers rent on the cabin I lease near Southwest Harbor, keeps gas in the truck, buys groceries. It's steady, predictable. But I don't live off it. I live off the contract. Spencer Torres calls me on a satellite phone, not a regular cell. The kind that works anywhere. The kind that doesn't route through towers you can trace. He doesn't call often, maybe once a month. Sometimes 6 weeks go by, sometimes 2. I never know when it's coming. But when the phone buzzes in my pack, I know what it means. He sends coordinates, just numbers. Latitude, longitude, sometimes an altitude marker if it's steep terrain. No explanation, no briefing. He doesn't tell me what I'm looking for. But I've done this long enough that I can usually guess based on the area. Coastal coordinates mean one kind of job. Inland forests mean another. Wetlands are their own thing. After the call, I check my account on the laptop I keep in the cabin. The deposit shows up within an hour. Always large, always exact. 5 figures, sometimes low 6 if the job sounds complicated. He's never missed a payment. I'll give him that. Then I go out. I trap things hikers swear don't exist. That's the simplest way to put it. The things people see for half a second before their brain decides they didn't. The things that leave tracks rangers explain away as bears or foxes with mange. I don't know what they all are. I don't ask. Spencer doesn't tell me, and I figured out early that curiosity just makes the job harder. I keep them alive. That's part of the contract. No kills, no injuries I can avoid. I use traps I built myself, modified from old fish weirs and crab cages. Lightweight aluminum frames with reinforced mesh, spring doors, pressure plates I calibrate by hand. I carry a tranquilizer kit Spencer provided, preloaded syringes in a padded case, doses measured for body weight I have to estimate on the spot. Once they're down and secured, I haul them to remote clearings. Coordinates Spencer sent ahead of time, spots I scout the day before if I can. I leave the cage, back off 100 yards, and wait. The helicopters come in low. No markings, just flat black or sometimes dark green. They never land long, maybe 2 minutes on the ground. Crew in matching tactical gear loads the cage, lifts off, gone. I hike back out, delete the coordinates from my phone, move on. The routine felt controlled. Past tense, I guess. It felt like something I could manage. I knew the risks. I knew the parameters. Spencer kept his word. I kept mine. And the money let me live the way I wanted. Alone. Quiet. Off the grid in all the ways that mattered. Then the last job near Skutik Point went wrong. Spencer called on a Thursday. Coordinates put me 2 miles inland from the coastline, in a section of scrub forest most tourists don't bother with. Rocky soil, tight brush. Not scenic enough for the Instagram crowds. I went out that night. Figured I'd have it wrapped by dawn. I set the trap near a game trail I'd noticed on earlier patrols. Fresh scat, broken branches at shoulder height. Something big moving through. I rigged the door, checked the trigger tension, then settled into a gap between 2 granite outcrops about 30 feet uphill. Standard weight. It showed up around 2 in the morning. I didn't get a great look before it hit the trap. Low to the ground, maybe 4 feet at the shoulder. Too many legs. That's what I remember most. The way it moved didn't match anything I'd seen before, and I've seen plenty by now. The door dropped. Should have been done. I started down the slope, trank kit in hand. That's when it fought. Most of them panic for a few seconds, then freeze. trapped animal instinct. They push at the mesh, test the frame, but they don't really fight. This one was different. It slammed into the sides hard enough that the whole cage skidded sideways on the rocks. I heard the frame groan. Aluminum's light, but it's strong. The sound it made wasn't right. I got the trank into it on the second try. Took longer than it should have. The thing kept moving, twisting, and I couldn't get a clean angle through the mesh. When I finally stuck it, I pulled back fast and waited for the dose to drop it. It didn't drop. It got faster. I don't know if I miscalculated the weight, or if it metabolized the drug differently. Doesn't matter. The cage tipped, fully over on its side, and one of the joints where the door frame met the main body bent just enough to create a gap. Not a big gap, maybe 6 inches. Enough. It came through hard, caught my hand against the cage edge as I tried to shove the frame back down. I felt the thumb snap before I registered the pain. Clean break just below the joint. The kind of injury that doesn't bleed much but makes your whole hand useless. I got the backup trap deployed. Smaller one I carry for emergencies. More of a snare setup than a cage. It worked. Barely. The trank must have started hitting by then because the thing slowed down enough for me to tighten the cables and get it secured. By the time the helicopter arrived, my hand had swollen up enough that I couldn't grip the steering wheel right. I made it back to the truck. Sat there for maybe 10 minutes trying to decide if I could ignore it. I couldn't. I drove to Maine Coast Memorial Hospital in Ellsworth. Closest ER that wasn't going to ask too many questions. I've been there once before for stitches. They're used to rangers coming in with random injuries. Occupational hazard, that kind of thing. Rita Brooks treated me. I'd seen her the last time too. She's probably late 30s, competent. The kind of nurse who doesn't waste time on small talk but isn't cold either. She looked at my hand, looked at my face, then asked what happened. I fed her a trimmed-down version. Told her I'd been securing a damaged trail marker near Scudic, slipped on wet rocks, caught my hand between the post and a boulder. Not totally a lie. There were rocks. My hand did get caught. She didn't buy it. I could tell. But she didn't push. Just nodded, ordered an x-ray, then came back 20 minutes later with the images clipped to a light board. Clean break, she said. We'll splint it. You'll need to follow up with orthopedics in a week. Sure, I said. She gave me a look. The kind that said she knew I wouldn't. They splinted it. Gave me a prescription for pain medication I didn't plan to fill, and a sheet of follow-up instructions I folded into my jacket pocket. I signed the discharge paperwork with my left hand. Looked like a kid's signature, all shaky and uneven. Rita walked me to the exit. Didn't say much. Just told me to keep it elevated and avoid using the hand for anything that required grip strength. I'll be careful, I said. You should be, she said. Then she went back inside. I sat in the truck in the parking lot for a while. The splint was bulky, foam and plastic wrapped tight with medical tape. Standard hospital setup. It'd keep the bones stable, but it'd also make it impossible to work. I couldn't grip a trap frame. Couldn't handle the trank kit. Couldn't do anything Spencer might call me for. I pulled the splint off in the cab. Took maybe 2 minutes to unwrap all the layers. The thumb sat at a wrong angle, swollen and dark. I could see where the break was just by looking. I reset it myself, braced my hand against the dashboard, used my left hand to pull the thumb straight, then held it until the bone edges lined up. Wasn't the first time I'd done something like that. You spend enough time alone in the woods, you learn how to handle your own injuries. This one hurt more than most, but it was manageable. I used electrical tape from the glove box to buddy tape the thumb to my index finger, wrapped it tight enough to keep everything stable. Not as clean as the hospital splint, but functional. Good enough. Then I headed back to patrol anyway. I had a shift starting at 7. It was almost 5 by the time I left the hospital. I drove back to the cabin, changed into a clean uniform, made coffee I didn't drink. My hand throbbed. The tape job wasn't great. I knew I'd probably regret it in a few days when the swelling got worse. But I went in. because I've learned that quitting doesn't stop anything from following me. 2 nights after the hospital, I was out near Jordan Pond with a clipboard and a headlamp, logging storm damage. That's what the paperwork would say. Mostly I walked the East Trail, checking for downed limbs and washouts, marking GPS points on the park tablet, and writing descriptions nobody would read. My right hand still hurt. The electrical tape had lasted maybe 6 hours before the swelling got bad enough that I cut it off and redid the whole thing with duct tape from the ranger station. Wasn't pretty. Wasn't medical. But it kept my thumb stable enough to grip a pen if I didn't think about it too much. The air smelled like wet pine and cold mud. It was past 11 and I hadn't seen another person since I parked the truck at the Jordan Pond trailhead lot. Just me and the sound of water dripping off branches every time the wind picked up. I'd logged maybe a dozen spots, couple broken birches. One section where runoff had chewed a groove across the trail deep enough to twist an ankle in. Standard stuff after 3 days of rain. That's when the satellite phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. Spencer Torres. I answered. "Gilbert," I said. Pickup locations changed. Spencer's voice came through flat and clear. No greeting. Never was. "Sending coordinates now." I heard the message tone before he finished talking. I pulled the phone away from my ear and opened it. The coordinates dropped into the message screen. I recognized the area, about 4 miles northwest, inland from Seal Harbor in a section of mixed forest with decent cover and not much foot traffic this time of year. "Got it," I said. "Live catch, standard terms." Spencer paused, just a beat. No helicopter this time. That got my attention. I stopped walking. "What's the transport?" "You deliver it to the ferry terminal in Bar Harbor, north end of the main lot. There's a loading area behind the ticket building. Be there before 0500. I looked at my watch. 11:42. That gave me just over 5 hours to trap something I hadn't scouted, sedate it without killing it, load it into my truck, and drive it into town without getting pulled over or seen by anyone who'd remember. My hand throbbed. I flexed my fingers and felt the duct tape pull against skin. "That's tight," I said. "You'll make it work." Spencer's tone didn't change. "One more thing." I waited. "Someone on your staff's been asking about your night patrol routes." My chest tightened. I kept my voice level. "Who?" "Don't have a name yet. Just heard it flagged through a contact. Thought you'd want to know." "Yeah," I said. "Appreciate it. Coordinates live. Payment on delivery." He hung up. I stood there in the dark with the phone in my good hand and the headlamp beam cutting a white circle across wet leaves. Someone asking about my routes. That could mean a dozen things. Could be Randall doing some kind of efficiency audit. Could be another ranger wondering why I logged so many miles outside my assigned zone. Could be nothing. Probably wasn't nothing. I pulled up the coordinates again and studied them. The location sat in a drainage basin where 2 ridge lines funneled runoff into a marshy stretch. Good place for something to den up or pass through. If Spencer sent me there, it meant someone had reported something, or his network had picked up signs. Either way, I had work to do and not much time to do it. I pocketed the phone and started back toward the truck. My hand hurt worse when I walked fast. I ignored it. 40 minutes later, I was loading traps into the truck bed when headlights swept across the ranger station parking lot. I looked up. Randall Brown's vehicle, white Park Service SUV with the light bar on top and the Acadia logo on the door. He pulled in next to my truck and killed the engine. That wasn't normal. Randall didn't work nights unless there was an incident, and if there was an incident, someone would have radioed me. I straightened up and stepped back from the truck bed. Randall climbed out and shut his door. He was wearing his pressed uniform and a rain shell. Looked like he'd come straight from somewhere official. His face had that set expression he used when he wanted you to know he was in charge. Gilbert, he said. Got a minute? Sure. He looked at the traps in my truck bed. 2 cages, both medium size, both strapped down with bungee cords. Heading out? Follow up on some trail damage from the storm, I said. Might need to mark a couple sections for closure if the erosion's bad enough. Randall nodded. Didn't look convinced, but didn't push it. Come inside first. There's someone I want you to meet. I felt that tightness in my chest again. I didn't let it show. Yeah, okay. He turned and walked toward the station. I followed. Inside, the lights were too bright and the air smelled like burnt coffee and wet boots. Randall's office door was open. He led me down the hall and stepped through, holding the door. I went in after him. There was a woman sitting in one of the chairs across from Randall's desk. She stood up when I came in. 5'8", maybe 5'9". Athletic build. Dark blonde hair pulled back tight in a low ponytail. She wore a federal field jacket, dark green, with a badge clipped to the chest pocket. Utility pants and heavy boots. The boots had wet seaweed stuck to the tread near the heel. Just a little. Fresh enough it hadn't dried yet. This is Lexi Thornton, Randall said. Federal wildlife officer. She's here helping us with the missing person reports. Lexi stepped forward and held out her hand. I shook it with my left. She noticed. Her eyes flicked down to my right hand where the duct tape showed past the edge of my sleeve, then back up to my face. She didn't say anything about it. Pedro Gilbert, I said. Good to meet you. Her voice was calm, professional. She had steel blue eyes that didn't move much. Chief Brown's been telling me you cover a lot of ground out here. Part of the job, I said. I'm hoping you can help fill in some gaps. She smiled, just a little, controlled. We're trying to map recent sightings and movement patterns. Figure out if there's a wildlife factor in the disappearances. I nodded, kept my face neutral. Sure, whatever helps. Randall moved around behind his desk and sat down. Lexi's got clearance to access our patrol logs and incident reports. I told her you've been out more than anyone the past 2 months, so you'd have the best sense of what's moving through the area. Happy to share what I've seen, I said. Lexi sat back down and pulled a small notebook from her jacket pocket. Flipped it open. Chief Brown mentioned you do a lot of night patrols. That unusual? Not really, I said. Most problem wildlife's active after dark. Makes sense to be out when they are. Makes sense, she agreed. She wrote something in the notebook. I couldn't see what. You ever run into anything that didn't fit the usual profile? Tracks you couldn't identify? Behavior that seemed off? I thought about the thing that broke my thumb. The too many legs and the speed after the tranquilizer. Nothing concrete, I said. Couple times I've found scat I couldn't place. But that happens. Animals pass through. Any of those times recently? Last one was maybe 3 weeks ago, up near Skudik. She wrote that down too. You file a report? Didn't seem worth it. Could have been anything. Lexi looked up at me. Her expression didn't change, but I got the feeling she was deciding something. If you see anything else that stands out, I'd appreciate a call. Doesn't matter how small. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a card. Plain white with a name and a phone number. She held it out. I took it with my left hand. Yeah, no problem. Randall cleared his throat. Lexi's going to be around for the next week or so. She'll be coordinating with state police and the search teams. Anything comes up on your patrols, loop her in. Understood, I said. Lexi closed her notebook and stood. I won't keep you. I know you've got work to do. She looked at my hand again. Just a glance. Hope that heals up quick. Thanks, I said. Randall walked her to the door. I stayed where I was. They talked low in the hallway for maybe 30 seconds. Then I heard the front door open and close. Randall came back into the office and shut the door behind him. She's sharp, he said. Don't underestimate her. Wasn't planning to. Good. He sat down again and leaned back in his chair. I don't know what you've got going on, Knights Gilbert, and I'm not asking, but keep it clean. Federal attention's the last thing this park needs right now. I met his eyes. Understood. He waved me off. Go do your follow-up. Check in when you're back. I left. Out in the parking lot, I stood next to my truck and looked at the card Lexi had given me. Plain print. Her name, a number with a 207 area code. Maine. I turned it over. Nothing on the back. The seaweed on her boots bothered me. Could have been from walking the shore earlier. Could have been from the ferry docks. Could have been from the Bar Harbor terminal. Could have been she wanted me to see it. I didn't know which option was worse. I pocketed the card and climbed into the truck. My hand hurt. The coordinates Spencer sent were waiting, and I had less than 5 hours now. Someone on staff asking about my roots. Lexi Thornton showing up with federal clearance and questions that sounded helpful, but felt like a grid tightening. Randall telling me to keep it clean while looking at me like he already knew I wouldn't. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot. I needed to set a trap, make a catch, and deliver it to the same terminal Lexi might have just come from. All before dawn. All without being seen. The walls were closing. I could feel it. Multiple directions, different angles. Spencer on one side with his contracts and his leverage. Lexi on another with her notebook and her federal weight. Randall in the middle telling me not to make waves while someone I couldn't see was already asking the wrong questions. I drove north toward the coordinates and started thinking about distance. How to create it. How fast I could move if I had to. What I'd need to walk away clean. If clean was even still an option. Probably wasn't. But I'd figure it out. That's what I did. I always figured it out. I needed help. That was clear enough. Less than 5 hours to trap something I hadn't seen, deliver it without being spotted, and keep Thornton from connecting me to any of it. Couldn't do it alone. Not with my hand wrapped in duct tape and the timeline this tight. So I needed someone who wouldn't ask questions. Someone who needed cash more than answers. Ernest James Fitt, 22, EMT student at Eastern Maine Community College, picking up seasonal trail work through the park. I'd seen him on crew rotations 3 or 4 times this summer. Good with his hands, kept his head down, showed up on time. He was bunking at the staff housing near Seawall, sharing a cabin with 2 other seasonal workers. I knew he was saving for his final semester because I'd overheard him turning down a bar shift someone offered him. He'd said he couldn't afford to lose sleep before an early trail run. Made sense. Someone disciplined enough to prioritize sleep probably needed money badly enough to take a weird job. I pulled over at the Seawall parking lot and checked the time. 12:53 a.m. The staff cabin sat a quarter mile down a gravel access road past the campground loop, lights off in most windows. I texted Ernest from my personal phone, the regular one, not the sat phone. Kept it simple. Need help with wildlife response tonight. Cash job. You available? Took him 4 minutes to reply. How much? 500, 4 hours work. Done by 5 a.m. Another pause, longer this time. Probably weighing whether this was legitimate or stupid. What kind of wildlife? Tell you when you're in the truck. Bring gloves and your EMT pack. Okay, 2 minutes. I waited with the engine running. Ernest came out of the third cabin wearing a hoodie, work pants, and his trail boots. He carried a small pack I recognized as the standard EMT jump bag from the college program. He got in the passenger side and shut the door quietly. "Hey," he said. I handed him 500s from my wallet, all cash, no record. "This stays between us. You don't mention it to anyone at the park. Not your roommates, not the crew lead, not anyone." He folded the bills and put them in his front pocket. "What are we doing?" "Trapping something that's been moving through the park. Live capture. I need an extra set of hands and someone who can handle a medical kit if things go sideways." "What kind of animal?" "Don't know yet. Could be a coyote, could be something else." Reports have been inconsistent. Ernest looked at my duct-taped hand. You good to do this? Good enough. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't get out of the truck either. That was enough. I pulled back onto the road and headed north. Ernest stayed quiet for the first mile. Then he said, "This legal?" "Park Service approved," I said, which wasn't a lie. I had approval to conduct wildlife response, just not approval for what Spencer paid me to do. You do this a lot? When it's needed. He nodded. Didn't push. That was good. I needed someone who could follow instructions without requiring a full briefing. After another minute, I said, "If anyone asks later, you helped me check storm damage and track a potentially rabid coyote, that's it." "Got it." We drove in silence after that. I figured that was the extent of his questions. Some people just need enough information to justify taking the money. Ernest seemed like that type. I still had one more call to make. I pulled over at a turnout near Bubble Pond and told Ernest to wait in the truck. He didn't ask why. I walked 20 feet into the trees with the sat phone and dialed Autumn Garrett's number from memory. Not the sat phone contact list, her regular landline. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice came through clear and steady despite the hour. "Pedro, sorry it's late. I don't sleep much anymore. What do you need?" Autumn had been feeding me folklore for 3 years. Old Acadia stories, Wabanaki warnings, settler superstitions that didn't make it into the park brochures. She'd been the research librarian at Bangor Public Library for 32 years before retiring, and she'd spent a lot of that time cataloging things people didn't want cataloged. She never asked where my money came from, never asked what I did with the information she gave me. Just passed along what she knew and accepted the occasional envelope I mailed her. "I need anything you've got on something that leaves seaweed trails inland," I said, "and takes people." Pause. I heard her moving, probably toward her desk. She kept everything in notebooks, didn't trust digital files. "There's an old story," she said. "The borrower. Heard it twice. Once from a Penobscot elder in the 70s. Once from a fisherman's widow in Bass Harbor in 94. It takes people, wears them for a night, returns them changed." Changed how? They don't remember it, but they're different after. Colder, more careful. They stop trusting the same way. I watched Ernest through the windshield. He was checking his phone, probably texting someone that he'd be back late. "What does it look like?" I asked. "That's the problem. It looks like whoever it took wears them the way you'd wear a coat. The old stories say it comes from the water, leaves salt behind, seaweed, sometimes sand." That lined up. Thornton's boots, the seaweed stuck in the tread. "How do you stop it?" "You don't," Autumn said. "You avoid it. Don't go where it's been. Don't follow wet tracks at night. And if someone comes back different, you don't ask what happened." That's it. That's it. The stories don't include instructions for killing it, Pedro, just warnings. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Autumn waited. She was good at that. "If I catch it," I said, "what happens?" "I don't know. No one's ever tried. Guess I'll find out." "Be careful," she said. "This one doesn't follow normal rules." None of them do. This one's worse. I ended the call and walked back to the truck. Ernest looked up from his phone when I got in. "We good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "We're good." I pulled back onto the road and kept driving. The plan was simple. Catch whatever had been leaving seaweed where it shouldn't be. Deliver it to the Bar Harbor ferry terminal before 5 a.m. Avoid Thornton. Get Ernest back to his cabin before anyone noticed he'd been gone. Simple didn't mean easy, but it was all I had. The supply shed sat a quarter-mile off Route 233, down a fire access road the Park Service kept locked except during high fire season. I had a key. Wasn't supposed to, but Randall had given me one 2 years ago when I'd started doing more night work. He'd never asked for it back. I unlocked the padlock and pulled the chain off the gate, then drove through and relocked it behind us. The shed was a 15 by 20 prefab metal building painted forest green. No windows. One door, solar panel on the roof to keep the interior batteries charged. Ernest followed me inside. I flipped the switch and 2 LED strips buzzed to life overhead. The gear sat on pegboard and metal shelving along the back wall. Net launcher, modified from a marine rescue model, compressed air canister, 40-foot range. Dart gun, tranquilizer rig Spencer had sent me after the second job. Preloaded syringes in a foam-lined case. Zip ties in 3 sizes. Medical kit with field sutures, bandages, antiseptic, and emergency coagulant. 2 collapsible cages, smaller than the ones I'd used before. A roll of heavy mesh, climbing rope, carabiners, work gloves. I started pulling things off the shelves and loading them into a duffel. Ernest watched for a minute, then said, "That's a lot of gear for a coyote. Better to have it." He picked up the dart gun, checked the chamber. "You've done this before." "Yeah. This isn't just Park Service work." I stopped packing and looked at him. "You want out? Now's the time. Keep the money. Walk back to the road. I'll drop you at Seawall after." Ernest set the dart gun down carefully. He looked at the gear, then at me. "What are we really catching?" "Don't know yet. Something that shouldn't be here." "And then what?" "We deliver it. Someone else handles it after that." "Who?" "People I don't ask questions about." He was quiet for a long time. I went back to packing. Figured he'd either stay or leave. Didn't matter much either way. I'd already committed to the plan. Having help would make it easier, but I'd done harder jobs alone. Finally, Ernest said, "If we catch something and it's a person." "It's not a person. But if it looks like one, it's not." "How do you know?" I zipped the duffel and slung it over my shoulder. "Because people don't leave seaweed trails 4 miles inland, and they don't move the way the tracks show this thing moving." Ernest stared at me. "You think this is something else?" "Yeah." "Like what?" "That's what we're going to find out." He didn't say anything, just stood there with his EMT pack on and his hands in his pockets. I could see him working through it, weighing the money against the risk, trying to decide if I was legitimate or crazy. Then he said, "If this goes wrong and someone gets hurt, I'm calling it in. Fair. And if it's a person, I'm not helping you trap them. It's not a person. But if it is, then you walk. I'll handle it." He nodded slowly. "Okay. Okay, you're in, or okay, you're out." "I'm in," he said. "But I don't like this." "You don't have to like it. You just have to follow instructions and keep your mouth shut after." Ernest adjusted his pack straps and headed for the door. I locked the shed behind us and we got back in the truck. I started the engine and checked the time, 1:37 a.m. 3 hours and 23 minutes until the terminal deadline. We drove. The carriage road was closed for the season. Gate locked, chain threaded through, sign posted with dates through April. I had the key. Ernest didn't ask about that part. We parked at the trailhead and carried the gear in. 2 duffel bags, 1 cage trap, the dart gun in a soft case slung across my back. The moon was 3/4 full, bright enough that I kept my headlamp off. Ernest did the same after I told him to save the battery. The road was gravel and packed dirt, wide enough for maintenance vehicles. It cut through mixed forest, mostly pine and birch, with granite outcrops pushing up on the left side every 100 yards or so. No washouts, no fallen trees. The storm hadn't hit this section hard. We walked for 20 minutes. My boots crunched on gravel. Ernest's were quieter. He'd done trail work long enough to know how to move without broadcasting. The culvert was where the road crossed a seasonal drainage. Concrete cylinder maybe 4 feet across, half buried under the roadbed. In spring, it carried runoff. Right now it was dry. I stopped about 15 feet before it. Ernest set down his duffel. This the spot? Close enough. I'd checked the coordinates 3 times before we left the truck. The pickup location Spencer gave me was 60 yards east of here, downslope in thicker brush. But this culvert was the natural choke point. Anything moving through this area would use the road or cross near the drainage. That's how animals think. Paths of least resistance. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I'd saved a screenshot of the search grid from 2 days ago. A volunteer team had worked this section with dogs. The dogs tracked scent north along the road, then stopped at the culvert. Wouldn't cross. Handler tried twice. Dogs refused both times, then started whining and pulled back toward the trailhead. The report attributed it to scent loss at the water crossing. There wasn't any water. Ernest crouched near the culvert and clicked on his headlamp for 5 seconds. Red light. He swept it across the inside of the concrete tube, then turned it off. Dry, he said. Yeah. Dogs stopped here? That's what the report said. He stood up and looked at me. You think something's in there? No. I think something came through here. I unzipped the duffel and pulled out the cage. It was the smaller one, collapsible frame already assembled. I set it 10 feet past the culvert on the far side, angled so the door faced the drainage. Then I rigged the bait. Spencer hadn't specified what to use. He never did. I'd brought a plastic bag with raw chicken thighs from the grocery store in Ellsworth, 3 pounds, already going bad in the heat of my truck earlier. Now they smelled right, strong enough to carry. I hung the bag from a bungee cord inside the cage, just past the pressure plate. Ernest watched. That's it? Simple works. You really think a coyote's going to walk into that? If it's hungry enough. I wasn't expecting a coyote. We moved back 30 yards and found a spot off the road behind a fallen birch. The trunk was waist high. Good cover, dry enough to sit against. I set the dart gun case next to me and unzipped it halfway. Ernest sat to my left with his EMT pack between his knees. Then we waited. An hour passed, maybe longer. I didn't check my phone. The moon moved across the gap in the trees above the road. Shadows shifted. The temperature dropped maybe 5 degrees. Not enough to matter, but I felt it on my neck. Ernest didn't talk. That was good. Some people can't sit still, can't stop filling silence. He just leaned back against the birch and kept his eyes on the trap. My hand throbbed under the duct tape. I'd wrapped it too tight earlier, and now my thumb felt hot, swollen, probably worse than it had been at the hospital. I didn't adjust the tape. Couldn't afford to lose stability. 2 hours. Nothing moved near the trap. No deer, no raccoons, nothing. That started to bug me a little. The bait was strong. I could still smell it from 30 yards out. Anything with a nose should have picked it up by now. Foxes, fishers, even a skunk. This area had wildlife. I'd seen tracks on every patrol I'd run through here. But nothing came. Ernest shifted his weight. I glanced at him. He was staring at the culvert, not the trap. What? I said. It's quiet. Yeah. I mean really quiet. I listened. He was right. The normal sounds were gone. No wind in the pine branches. No small animals moving through the underbrush. No insects. Not even the far-off hum of a car on the main road 2 miles south. It was the kind of silence you get right before something breaks. I'd felt it before. Twice. Once near Skutik when I'd trapped something with too many legs. Once near Otter Cliffs when I'd found tracks that didn't match anything in the field guide. Ernest looked at me. That's not normal. No. Should we... My radio clicked on. No static. Just a clean transmission. Louder than it should have been. Ranger Gilbert, this is base. Respond. I pulled the radio off my belt. The channel indicator showed 4, which was right. The signal strength was full bars. I didn't respond. Ranger Gilbert, Chief Brown needs you at the maintenance barn immediately. Acknowledge. Ernest stared at me. You gonna answer? No. Gilbert, respond. This is urgent. The voice sounded like Randall. Same cadence, same flat managerial tone. But Randall didn't work nights, and I hadn't told anyone I was out here. I turned the radio off and clipped it back to my belt. Ernest kept staring. What the hell? Radios can lie. What does that mean? It means we're staying here. That was the chief. He said it's urgent. He doesn't know where I am. Then how'd he? He didn't. Ernest went quiet. I watched his face. He was running through it, trying to make it add up. The late night job, the locked supply shed, the trap in a closed area. Now a radio call that didn't make sense. He didn't ask the next question, just nodded once and settled back against the birch. Smart kid. I kept my eyes on the trap. My right hand moved to the dart gun case resting on the zipper pull. The forest stayed quiet. No wind, no movement. Then I saw the headlamp. Single beam, white light, coming up the carriage road from the south. Maybe 100 yards out, moving steady, not fast, not slow. The kind of pace someone uses when they know exactly where they're going. Ernest saw it too. Someone's coming. Yeah. The light kept coming, closer, 80 yards, 60. I pulled the dart gun out of the case and set it across my lap. Ernest looked at it, then at me, but didn't say anything. 40 yards. I could see her now. Lexi Thornton. Same federal field jacket, same ponytail, same boots. She walked like the gravel wasn't there. No stumble, no adjustment for the uneven ground. Just smooth forward movement, too controlled for terrain she shouldn't know this well. She stopped 10 feet from the trap and turned off her headlamp. For a few seconds she just stood there, looking at the cage. Not surprised, not confused, just looking. Then she turned toward us. Ranger Gilbert. Her voice carried clean across 30 yards. No strain, like she'd known we were here the whole time. I stood up. Ernest stayed low. Ma'am, I said. She walked closer, not all the way. Just enough to cut the distance in half, 15 yards now. Her hands were empty, loose at her sides. This is a closed area, she said. Yes, ma'am. You're aware of that. I am. Mind telling me what you're doing? Wildlife response. Following up on the search dog report. With a trap. Yes, ma'am. She looked at the cage again. Not like she was evaluating my story. More like she was checking a schedule. You didn't file a permit for this, she said. Internal authorization. Chief Brown approved night patrols. That's not the same as trapping. No, ma'am, she smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I could write you up, she said. You could. But she didn't move, didn't pull out a notebook, didn't ask for my credentials. Just stood there, watching the trap, like she was waiting for something to arrive on time. I kept my right hand near the dart gun, not on it, just near. You should probably head back, she said. It's late. Dangerous to be out here alone. I'm not alone. Her eyes flicked to Ernest. For half a second she didn't react, then her focus locked. Ernest shifted his weight, just a small movement, adjusting his stance behind the birch. Her head snapped toward him, not like a person tracking motion, like something that hunts. Her eyes didn't blink, didn't widen, just fixed on him with the kind of precision you see in animals that measure distance before they strike. Ernest froze. I put my hand on the dart gun. I decided we were done. Didn't say it out loud. Just stood there with my hand on the dart gun, and Thornton locked onto Ernest like she was calculating throw distance, and I knew we weren't catching anything tonight. Not like this. Not with her standing there waiting for the same thing I was, except she wasn't here to trap it. We're leaving, I said. Thornton's eyes stayed on Ernest another 2 seconds. Then she looked back at me. Didn't argue. Didn't ask questions. Just stepped sideways off the trail, giving us room. That was worse than if she'd tried to stop us. Ernest didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his EMT pack and stood, keeping the fallen birch between himself and Thornton until he was next to me. I picked up the dart gun case and slung one duffel over my shoulder. Left the cage where it was. $500 worth of aluminum and mesh. But I wasn't walking past her to retrieve it. "You're leaving the trap," Thornton said. "I'll get it tomorrow, during daylight." "Yeah." She nodded once. "Safer that way." I started walking. Ernest stayed close, half a step behind my left shoulder. Thornton didn't follow. I heard her boots on gravel for a few seconds, then nothing. When I looked back at the 30-yard mark, she was gone. The trap was still there, door open, chicken guts swaying on the bungee cord. The forest was still silent. We walked fast, not running, but steady. Ernest kept his headlamp on red and didn't say anything for the first 10 minutes. I counted steps and listened for movement behind us. Heard nothing except our boots and our breathing. At the culvert, I slowed. Ernest stopped beside me. "What?" "Hold on." I swept my headlamp across the drainage. Dry concrete, same as before. Gravel road on both sides. But there were prints now, coming up from the south, cutting across the road right where we'd walked 2 hours ago. Boot prints, in mud. Except it hadn't rained tonight. The ground was dry. I knelt and looked closer. Size 11, same as mine. Vibram tread, same pattern. Worn heel on the right boot where I dragged it slightly when I was tired. Same angle. Ernest crouched next to me. "Those are fresh." "Yeah." "Those are your boots." I didn't answer. Tracked the prints with my light. They followed our original path for maybe 20 feet, then veered left into the trees. I stood and followed them off the road, moving slow. Ernest stayed with me. The prints went 30 feet into the brush and stopped at a granite boulder about waist high. There was a wet palm print on the rock. Hand pressed flat, fingers spread. I leaned in. The print was human-shaped. 5 fingers. But the joints were wrong. Too many of them. The index finger bent in 3 places instead of 2, and the thumb was too long, angled back toward the wrist like it could fold completely flat. "Pedro." "I see it." "What the hell is that?" I touched the edge of the print with my left hand. It was cold. Salt water. Cold. My fingers came away damp and I smelled seaweed. "It copied me," I said. Ernest stared at the print. "Copied you? Boots, gait, probably the uniform too." "How?" "I don't know." I stepped back and looked at the trail the prints made. Stride length matched mine. Weight distribution matched mine. If I'd seen these without context, I would have assumed I made them during a patrol I'd forgotten. But I hadn't been here. Not on this route. Not tonight. Ernest's voice went tight. "Is it still out here?" "Probably." "Wearing your face?" "I don't know what it wears," I said. "But yeah, probably." He turned in a slow circle, scanning the trees with his headlamp. "We need to leave." Agreed. We went back to the road and kept moving. I didn't look behind us again. Took 22 minutes to reach the truck. I unlocked it, threw the duffel and dart case in the back, and climbed in. Ernest got in on the passenger side and locked his door immediately. I started the engine and drove. Didn't go back to the ranger station. Didn't go to the supply shed. Went south on Route 3 toward Trenton. Then turned onto the gravel access road that led to my house. It was 1:48 a.m. I had 3 hours and 12 minutes until Spencer's deadline, and I wasn't making it. Didn't have the catch, didn't have a plan. Had proof something was copying me, and that was worse. Ernest watched the trees go past. "Where are we going?" "My place." "Why?" "Because it's reinforced." He looked at me. Reinforced. Yeah. For what? For this, I said. My house was a single-story cabin set back 200 feet from the road on a quarter-acre of cleared land with pine forest on 3 sides. I'd leased it for 4 years, paid extra for privacy and distance from neighbors. The landlord lived in Florida and didn't ask questions as long as rent cleared on time. I'd made modifications, reinforced the door frames with steel plates bolted through the studs, replaced the locks with commercial-grade deadbolts, the kind you see on evidence rooms, installed motion-activated cameras covering the driveway, the front door, the back door, and the clearing on the east side where the woodshed stood. Cameras fed to a monitor in the kitchen that ran on battery backup. The freezer room was in the basement. It used to be a root cellar. Concrete walls, concrete floor, no windows. I'd installed a commercial freezer unit, the kind restaurants use, and added an exterior locking bar. It locked from the outside. You could close someone in there, and they wouldn't get out. Or you could close something in there. I pulled into the driveway and killed the headlights. The motion sensors triggered, and 2 exterior floods came on, washing the clearing in white light. Ernest looked at the house, looked at the cameras mounted under the eaves, looked at the steel plate reinforcements visible around the door frame. "This looks like a place where you store danger," he said. "Not avoid it. Maybe. You bring things here. Sometimes. Live things. Not anymore." He was quiet for a few seconds. Then, "I want to go back to Seawall." I pulled $800 from my wallet. Hundreds. Handed them to him. "What's this for?" "Staying until morning." Ernest looked at the bills, looked at the house. "You think it followed us?" "I think it knows where I live," I said. "I think it's known for a while. And I think you're safer here than in staff housing with 2 roommates who won't wake up if something walks in." "You don't know that." "I know Thornton walked up that trail without making sound," I said. "I know the dogs wouldn't cross the culvert. I know something left my boot prints in mud that doesn't exist. You want to go back to a bunkhouse with a door that locks with a thumb latch, that's your call, but I'm paying you to stay." He folded the money and put it in his pocket. "Okay." We got out. I grabbed the duffel and dart case from the truck bed and unlocked the front door. 2 deadbolts. Took 15 seconds. Ernest followed me inside and I locked both behind us. The interior was basic. Kitchen, living room, bedroom, bathroom. I didn't own much furniture. Table, chair, couch I'd bought used, bed frame. The monitor sat on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker, showing 4 camera feeds in a grid. Ernest set his EMT pack on the table and looked around. "You live here?" "Yeah, alone." "Yeah, for how long?" 4 years. He walked to the monitor and studied the feeds. Driveway empty, front door clear, back door clear. East clearing showing the woodshed and tree line, all static, no movement. "Does this work?" he asked. "It works." "Ever catch anything on it?" "Couple times." "Like what?" "Deer, fox, a guy trying to repo the wrong truck." Ernest almost smiled, didn't quite make it. He sat down at the table and unzipped his EMT pack, pulling out a water bottle and drinking half of it in one go. I made coffee. Didn't ask if he wanted any. Just made a full pot and poured 2 mugs. Handed him one. He took it. We sat there for 20 minutes. Didn't talk much. He asked if I had food. I gave him a protein bar from the cabinet. He asked if the basement door locked. I said yes. He asked if I'd ever used the freezer room on a person. I said no, and that was true. Never a person. At 2 a.m., the front camera feed changed. I saw it first. Stood up fast enough that my chair scraped tile. Ernest turned. "What?" I pointed at the monitor. There was someone standing at the end of the driveway, 50 feet from the house, just standing there in the rain. Except it wasn't raining. The figure was Randall, pressed, uniform, rain shell, hands at his sides, facing the house, not moving. Ernest leaned closer to the screen. "Is that your boss?" "Looks like him." Why is he just standing there? I watched the feed. Randall didn't move, didn't shift weight, didn't look around. Just stood in rain that wasn't falling anywhere except on him. Water ran off his shoulders and dripped from his sleeves. I felt relief for about 2 seconds. Relief that it wasn't Thornton. Relief that it was someone I knew. Someone with a reason to show up. Then I remembered the radio. "It's not him," I said. Ernest looked at me. "How do you know?" "Because Randall doesn't know where I live." That wasn't completely true. Randall had my address on file for payroll, but he'd never been here, never asked to come here, never showed up unannounced, and definitely not at 2 a.m. in phantom rain. The figure started walking toward the house. Slow, steady steps. Same controlled pace Thornton used on the carriage road. I went to the intercom panel by the door and hit the speaker button. "Stop there." The figure stopped. 20 feet from the front door now. Close enough that the floods lit him clearly. It looked exactly like Randall. Same height, same build, same face. But the rain kept falling on him, and nowhere else. The intercom crackled. "Pedro." Randall's voice. Exact tone, exact cadence. "I found something. Evidence from the missing person case. We need to talk." I didn't answer. "It's important. I need you to see this." Ernest stood behind me, staring at the monitor. The figure on the screen was looking directly at the camera now. "I'm not opening the door," I said into the intercom. "I'm not asking you to open it. Just come to the window. I'll show you what I found." "Show me from there." Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Then, "You don't trust me." "Not tonight." "That's smart," the voice said. "You're learning." I hit the floodlight switch. All 4 exterior floods kicked to full brightness, 2,000 lumens washing the clearing white. The figure didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't raise a hand to shade its eyes. Just stood there in the rain, staring at the camera, water streaming down its face. Then it walked to the front window, pressed one hand against the glass. The palm print fogged the glass immediately. Condensation spread from the edges of the hand, clouding the window. The figure lifted its hand and used one finger to write in the fog. Pedro Miguel Gilbert. My full legal name. Not the name on my Ranger ID, not the name Randall used. The name on my birth certificate and my passport, locked in a drawer in the bedroom. Below the name, it wrote a time. 4:10. Ernest's voice came from behind me, quiet and tight. "How does he know that?" "He doesn't." "Then how?" "It's not him." I watched the monitor. The figure stepped back from the window, leaving the fogged message. It looked at the camera again, tilted its head slightly, the way someone does when they're trying to remember something. Then it turned and walked back down the driveway. Same steady pace. At the 50-foot mark, it stopped and stood in the same spot as before. Just stood there, in the rain that wasn't falling. Ernest sat down at the table, put his head in his hands. What the hell is that? I stared at the screen, at Randall's face, at the rain, at the name written in fog on my window. "It's the same thing," I said. "Radios, paperwork, authority. It uses things that get you to open doors." "What happens at 4:10? "I don't know. But I had 2 hours and 10 minutes to figure it out." I went to the kitchen and pulled the sat phone from my pocket. Ernest stayed at the table watching the monitor. The figure outside hadn't moved in 3 minutes. Still standing at the window, still in rain that wasn't falling anywhere else. I dialed Autumn from memory. She picked up on the second ring. "Pedro." "It's here," I said. "At my house, wearing my chief." "Is it inside?" "No. Front yard, watching. Don't let it in." "I won't." She was quiet for 5 seconds. I heard pages turning. "You called earlier about the borrower. Now it's wearing someone you know." "Yeah. That means it's collecting you. Routines first, then faces. It prefers uniforms and official roles, people who repeat the same actions, same places, same words. You're a ranger, yes? Yeah. You work nights, same routes? I thought about my patrols. Jordan Pond, Cadillac Summit Road, Scudic Point, Thunderhole after storms, the carriage roads. I'd been running the same grid for 4 years. Pretty much. That's why it wants you. You're a pattern, clean, repeatable. It probably watched you for weeks. Ernest was staring at me from the table. I turned toward the wall. How do I stop it? I said. You don't stop it with violence. That can rebound. It'll come back wearing the attacker next. Anything you do to it, it learns. Anything you are, it can become. Then what? Break its anchors, names, repeated routes, official symbols. It can't hold on to something that doesn't repeat. If you stop being the pattern, it loses the shape. I looked down at my uniform shirt, NPS patch on the shoulder, name badge over the chest pocket, ranger hat on the hook by the door. I've been wearing some version of this outfit almost every night for 4 years. My job made me a pattern, I said. Your job and your other work, Autumn said quietly. You're a bundle of repeatable actions, Pedro. Traps in the same areas, deliveries on schedule, same routes, same calls, same methods. To something like the borrower, you're a template. I didn't say anything. You need to break the template, she said. Stop repeating. Change your symbols. Don't be what it studied. And if I do that, it'll let go. It should lose cohesion, but Pedro, if it's already taken someone's face completely, that person is gone. You understand? Yeah. Don't try to save them. Just break your own pattern and get clear. Okay. Call me when you're safe. She hung up. I turned back toward the monitor. The figure was still there. Still Randall. Still wrong. Ernest said, "What did she say?" "It collects patterns. I need to stop being one." How? I looked at the NPS patch again. The badge. Stop wearing the uniform. Stop running the routes. Break everything it studied. Ernest nodded slowly. That's why it's here. You're the same every night. Yeah. He glanced at the monitor. What about him? The real chief? If it's wearing him, he's already gone. Ernest's face went tight. He didn't argue. I checked my phone. 4:03 a.m. Less than an hour until Spencer's deadline. No catch, no delivery, no plan except survive until morning and figure out how to stop being a park ranger. At 4:05, the lights went out. All of them. Kitchen overhead, living room lamp, monitor, exterior floods. The whole house dropped into darkness in less than a second. No flicker, no fade, just gone. I didn't move. Ernest's breathing got faster across the room. Breaker? He said. Maybe. But I didn't think so. Breakers tripped one at a time. This was everything. I pulled my headlamp from my belt and clicked it on. Ernest did the same. 2 beams crossing in the kitchen. The monitor was black. No camera feeds. No way to see outside. Backup battery should have caught the cameras, I said. Unless something cut the whole system, Ernest said. I walked to the window and looked out. No floods, no motion sensors. The driveway was completely dark. I couldn't see the figure anymore. Ernest stood up fast. Garage! What? I heard something. In the garage. I turned off my headlamp and listened. The house was quiet. Then I heard it. A slow scrape. Wet rubber on concrete, coming from the attached garage on the east side of the house. I'd locked the garage door from inside when we came in. Deadbolt and chain. But the overhead door had a manual release I couldn't secure from inside the house. The scraping stopped. Ernest whispered, "Is there another way out?" "Back door leads to the woodshed and trees." "We should go." "Not yet." I turned my headlamp back on and walked toward the basement door. Ernest followed. "What are you doing?" he said. "Getting something." The basement stairs were wood and steep. I went down fast, Ernest right behind me. The air was colder down here, damp. Concrete walls, concrete floor, exposed joists overhead. The freezer room was in the back corner behind a steel door with an exterior locking bar. I lifted the bar and pulled the door open. The freezer was off. Had been off for 2 months since I stopped bringing things here. The interior was empty except for 3 wire shelves and a toolbox I kept in the back corner. I walked to the toolbox and opened it. Flare gun inside. 3 flares. I loaded one and pocketed the other 2. Ernest's headlamp swept the room. What else you keep down here? Used to keep catches, not anymore. Why not? Spencer didn't like it. Said it complicated logistics. I turned to leave and my boot hit something that shouldn't have been there. A ranger hat, sitting on the floor just inside the door. I crouched and picked it up. It was damp. Not wet, just damp. I touched the brim and my fingers came away cold. I smelled them. Seawater. Ernest leaned closer. That yours? No, mine's upstairs. I turned the hat over. No name inside, no tag. But it was the right size, right style, standard issue. Then I saw the ear. It was on the floor where the hat had been, half hidden in shadow. Severed, clean, pale skin, small silver hoop earring through the lobe. I recognized the earring. Lexi Thornton had been wearing it when she shook my hand in Randall's office. Ernest made a noise behind me. Not quite a word. I didn't touch the ear. Just stared at it. If Lexi was dead, really dead, pieces of her in my basement, then whatever had been wearing her at the culvert wasn't her anymore. It was just the borrower in her shape. And if it could wear her after she was gone, it could wear anyone. Randall. Me. Ernest. We need to leave, I said. Yeah. I stood and turned toward the stairs. Ernest was already moving. We went up fast. I locked the basement door behind us out of habit, then realized it didn't matter. If something could get into a locked freezer room and leave a severed ear, a basement door wasn't going to stop it. Ernest grabbed his EMT pack from the table. I grabbed the dart gun case and the sat phone. We moved toward the front door. I unlocked the deadbolts. 15 seconds. My hands were shaking and the duct tape on my thumb caught on the second lock. Ernest said, "Truck?" "Yeah." I pulled the door open. The driveway was still dark. No motion floods. I couldn't see the figure anymore. Couldn't see anything past 20 feet. We walked fast toward the truck, gravel crunching under our boots. I kept the flare gun in my right hand, dart case in my left. Ernest stayed close. 30 feet from the house. 40. The truck was parked nose out, driver's side, facing us. I saw someone in the driver's seat. I stopped. Ernest stopped beside me. The figure was sitting behind the wheel, hands at 10 and 2, staring straight ahead through the windshield. Same build as Ernest, same hoodie, same profile. Ernest whispered, "That's me." "Yeah, but I'm here." "I know." The thing in the truck didn't move, didn't turn its head. Just sat there like it was waiting for ignition. I raised the flare gun and aimed at the windshield. "Back up," I said. Ernest took 3 steps back. I fired. The flare punched through the windshield and hit the figure in the chest. Glass spiderwebbed. The flare ignited inside the cab, white-hot magnesium burning at 3,000 degrees. The figure moved. It stood up through the burning windshield, glass falling off its shoulders, and it unfolded. Taller than Ernest, taller than me, joints bending backward under the hoodie, elbows reversing, spine arching the wrong way. The face was still Ernest's face, but the proportions were wrong now, stretched vertically, eyes too far apart. It stepped out of the truck. I grabbed Ernest's arm and ran. We went south down the driveway toward the road. I didn't look back. Behind us I heard footsteps. Not running, walking, steady pace. Same rhythm as Thornton on the carriage road. We hit the road and I turned east. Ernest kept up. We ran for 2 minutes, maybe 3. My lungs burned. The duct tape on my hand was coming loose. I slowed at a turnout and checked behind us. Nothing. Road empty. No headlights, no footsteps. Ernest bent over, hands on knees, breathing hard. Where are we going? Sand beach. Why? Public place. Scrutiny. It hesitates around witnesses. It's 4 a.m. There's no witnesses. There will be by dawn. And I'm calling Spencer, forcing this into the open. Ernest stared at me. You're delivering it? Yeah. To who? People with helicopters. I pulled off my ranger jacket and dropped it on the gravel. Ernest watched. I unclipped the name badge from my chest pocket, bent from the fight of the culvert still readable, and scraped it against the pavement until the clip broke and the nameplate separated. I threw the jacket into the brush and pocketed the bent badge. What are you doing? Ernest said. Breaking the symbol. It studied the uniform. I stopped wearing it. I stopped being the pattern. I pulled the ranger hat off my head and threw it after the jacket. Ernest looked at me. Just cargo pants now. Undershirt, boots. No patches, no badge, no hat. Does that work? He said. Autumn said it should. Should. It's all I've got. I pulled the sat phone and dialed Spencer. He answered on the first ring. You're late. Delivery's ready. Sand beach parking lot. Target's been wearing a federal officer's identity. Silence for 3 seconds. Explain, Spencer said. It's a borrower. Takes faces. Wore Lexi Thornton. She's dead. It's been collecting uniforms and repeating patterns. I broke mine. It's destabilized. You want it? You pick it up now. Sand beach is exposed. I know. If this goes loud, it won't. You've got 20 minutes. I hung up. Ernest said, He's coming? Yeah. How do you know? Because this is the kind of thing he pays for. We started walking towards Sand Beach. 2 miles. My hand was throbbing. Ernest stayed quiet. We reached the parking lot at 4:38. Empty except for one sedan that probably belonged to someone sleeping in a tent at Blackwoods. The ocean was loud, waves hitting rocks at the north end of the beach. I walked to the middle of the lot and waited. Ernest stood next to me. What if it shows up before the helicopter? Then we run for the water. It doesn't like salt. How do you know? The seaweed, the wet tracks. It comes from water, but it doesn't stay in it. At 4:41, I heard the helicopter. Black, no markings, coming in low from the northeast. It landed in the center of the parking lot, rotors still spinning. The side door opened and 4 men dropped out. Tactical gear, helmets, no faces. They carried stun poles and a containment sleeve, heavy mesh with reinforced zippers. One of them walked toward me, taller than the others. I recognized the scar on his chin through the helmet visor. Austin Rogers. Where? He said. I pointed toward the trail access. The thing that had been wearing Ernest stepped out of the trees. It looked more like Ernest now, proportions closer. Hoodie zipped, hands in pockets, but the eyes were wrong. Too still. The 4 men moved fast, 2 with stun poles, 2 with the sleeve. The borrower didn't run. It stood there, watching. Ernest pulled the bent name badge from my pocket and ran at it. Ernest! He jammed the badge into its mouth before it could react. The metal bent further, wedging between its teeth. It made a noise, not a word, just a wet hiss. I raised the dart gun and shot it in the neck. The borrower staggered. The men hit it with the stun poles. It dropped. They pulled the containment sleeve over its head and body, zipped it shut, and carried it toward the helicopter. Austin Rogers walked over to me. You violated terms, he said. Delivery was Bar Harbor Terminal, 0500. You're late, you changed location, and you required extraction assets. It killed a federal officer. Not our problem. You'll be billed for the helicopter, $75,000. Bill Spencer. We will. He'll bill you. The men loaded the sleeve into the helicopter. Rogers walked back and climbed in. The door slid shut. The helicopter lifted and turned northeast. Gone in 40 seconds. Ernest stood next to me, breathing hard. That's it? Yeah. They didn't ask what happened. Didn't check if we were okay. They don't care. Who are they? I don't know. The helicopter was gone now, just rotor noise fading over the ocean. I looked at Ernest. Randall's still missing. Lexi's dead. Investigations are going to swarm my night routines. You need to leave. Leave? Maine, for a while until this clears. What about you? I'll handle it. Ernest shook his head. I helped you catch that thing. I jammed a badge in its mouth. They saw me. Spencer doesn't care about you. You're not contracted. You sure? No. I pulled the cash from my pocket. $1,600 left. I gave it all to him. Double. Leave tonight. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Don't come back until I call you. Ernest took the money. Where do I go? Somewhere you've never been. Somewhere that's not a pattern. He nodded. We walked back to the road. I called a cab from my personal phone. It showed up in 12 minutes. Ernest got in. I told the driver to take him to Bangor bus station. Ernest looked at me through the window. You gonna be okay? Probably not. Call me when it's clear. Yeah. The cab drove off. I walked back to my house. Took an hour. The truck was still in the driveway, windshield burned through, cab scorched. I didn't go inside. Just grabbed my personal truck keys from the magnetic box under the rear wheel well and drove to the Trenton post office. I pulled an envelope from the glove box and wrote, Acadia National Park, Chief Ranger Randall Brown on the front. Inside, I put my ranger station key, carriage road key, supply shed key, and my NPS badge. No note. I dropped it in the outgoing mail slot. One more official tie cut. I drove back to the house and sat in the driveway until the sun came up. My phone rang at 6:15. Unknown number. I answered. Pedro Gilbert? A woman's voice. Formal. Yeah. This is Agent Carrie Voss, FBI. I'm calling regarding the disappearance of Chief Ranger Randall Brown and the death of Officer Lexi Thornton. We need you to come in for an interview. When? Today? Bangor Field Office, 2 p.m. Okay. Don't leave the state, Mr. Gilbert. She hung up. I sat there for another 20 minutes. Then I went inside and pulled the bent name badge from my pocket. The clip was broken, the engraving scratched, but it was still readable. P. Gilbert, National Park Service. I put it in my desk drawer. Breaking the pattern had worked. Once. But Spencer would bill me $75,000. The FBI wanted answers I couldn't give. Randall was missing. Lexi was dead in pieces. And investigations were going to pull every night route, every patrol log, every unexplained absence I'd logged in 4 years. Nothing was ending cleanly. I made coffee and waited for 2 p.m.